When Ada removed the white undergarment the old woman had given her, she did not know that, with that single act, she had sealed her fate. The cloth fell to the ground like a dead leaf, and in that exact moment, somewhere in the darkness of the forbidden forest, something ancient awakened, something that had been waiting, watching, ready to collect what was owed. Ada was born in the small village of Umoja, where gossip traveled faster than wind through the palm trees. She came into this world on a night when the moon hid its face, and the midwives whispered that it was a bad omen. Her mother died bringing her into the world, and her father, a simple fisherman named Obi, raised her alone in their small mud house near the river. Ada grew into a woman whose beauty was so ordinary that people's eyes slid past her like water off a leaf. Her skin was the color of earth after rain, neither dark nor light. Her body was neither thin nor full. Her face was neither ugly nor beautiful. She was simply there, like a rock in the path that everyone steps around without noticing. The women at the market would say while sorting their yams, "That Obi's daughter, what is her name again? The one who looks like nothing special." And the men would nod, already forgetting her face before the conversation ended. She wore a simple wrapper of brown cloth, faded from many washings in the river, and a head wrap that she tied with hands that never stopped trembling. But Ada carried something inside her that made her different. A hunger, a desperate, gnawing hunger to be seen, to be wanted, to be chosen. At night, lying on her mat in the darkness of their hut, she would press her hands against her chest and whisper to the spirits, "Please, please let someone see me. Let someone want me. I would give anything, anything." The spirits, it seemed, were listening. 3 moons after her 20th harvest season, when Ada had almost given up hope of ever marrying, a stranger came to Umoja. His name was Chike, and he was a trader from a distant settlement, with skin that gleamed like polished bronze and shoulders broad as a warrior's. He wore a wrapper of deep red cloth and bronze bracelets that clinked when he moved. When he smiled, women forgot their own husbands. When he spoke, his voice was smooth as palm wine and just as intoxicating. He came to trade salt and cloth, but within a week the entire village knew he had come for something else. He wanted Ada, plain, forgettable Ada, the one whose name people could never quite remember. The villagers gasped when they saw Chike standing at Obi's compound, holding a calabash of palm wine and asking for Ada's hand. Women gathering water at the river stopped mid-pour, their clay pots forgotten. "Did you see?" they whispered to each other, wrappers swishing as they leaned close. "That handsome trader, the one with eyes like a leopard. He wants Obi's daughter." The men drinking under the great tree shook their heads in confusion. "There must be something we do not see," the eldest said, adjusting the beads around his neck. "Something hidden. No man that fine chooses a woman like that for her face alone." But Cheek seemed genuinely enchanted. He brought Ada gifts, fine wrappers of indigo and yellow, beads that caught the light like captured stars. And always, always, those words that Ada had hungered for her entire life. "You are beautiful," he would whisper, touching her cheek with fingers that made her skin burn. "More beautiful than any woman I have ever known." And Ada, desperate Ada, believed him. How could she not? When you have been invisible your whole life, and suddenly someone sees you, truly sees you, you do not question it. You simply drink it in like a woman dying of thirst who finally finds water. They married under the full moon, with the whole village watching, in stunned silence. Mothers pulled their daughters close, whispering warnings about men who wanted what others could not see. But Ada heard nothing. She wore a wrapper of bright yellow, borrowed from a cousin who pitied her, and a head wrap tied with shaking hands. Her father Obi stood to the side, his weathered face troubled, but he said nothing. What could he say? His daughter was finally chosen, finally wanted. The wedding night, Chiki carried Ada across the threshold of the small hut he had built for them, at the edge of the village, and there, in the darkness lit only by a single oil lamp, he said the words that would change everything. "I have loved you truly, Ada, but there is something I must do now." His voice was different, colder, like water from a deep well. "Tomorrow I leave for my settlement. There is a debt I must pay, A debt that can only be paid with everything you own. Ada's heart, which had been so full moments before, began to crack like a calabash dropped on stone. "What do you mean?" she whispered. But Chike was already gathering things. Her father's fishing nets, the few bronze bracelets she owned, the small bag of cowrie shells hidden under her sleeping mat. Everything. When the sun rose the next morning, Chike was gone. And so was everything Obi had worked his whole life to gather. The village erupted in gossip like a disturbed anthill. "I told you," the women said at the market, their voices sharp with cruel satisfaction. "I told you something was wrong. Men like that do not marry women like her for love." The elders gathered under the great tree, shaking their heads as they drank palm wine from their gourds. "The girl was foolish," they declared, blinded by pretty words and a handsome face. "Now look what she has brought upon her father's house." Children pointed when Ada walked by, their young voices calling out the truth that adults whispered. "Thief bride, thief bride. She let him steal everything." Obi said nothing. He simply went to the river each morning with borrowed nets, his back bent with more than age, his eyes empty as abandoned wells. And Ada felt something break inside her that could never be mended. The hunger that had driven her, that desperate need to be seen and chosen, had destroyed the only person who had ever truly loved her. Her father, who had raised her alone, who had never once made her feel invisible, now suffered because of her foolishness. 12 moons passed. 12 moons of shame and whispers. 12 moons of watching her father grow thinner and more silent. And then, on a night when the moon was nothing but a sliver in the sky, Ada made a decision. She would go to the Forbidden Forest, to the place where the old healer was said to live, the place where desperate people went when they had nothing left to lose. The path into the forest was overgrown with vines that seemed to reach for her like fingers. The trees were so thick overhead that no starlight penetrated. Creatures she could not name made sounds in the darkness. But Ada walked on, her simple wrapper catching on thorns, her bare feet bleeding on the rough ground. "Please," she whispered to the darkness, to the spirits, to whatever was listening, "please let me fix what I broke. Let me give my father back what I took from him." And then she saw it, a light ahead, soft and golden like honey. And beneath an ancient Iroko tree whose roots were thick as a man's body, sat an old woman. Her hair was white as cotton, coiled on her head in intricate patterns. Her skin was dark and wrinkled, each line telling stories of generations long dead. She wore a wrapper of deep purple, the color of royalty, and around her neck hung beads of every color, clinking softly with each breath. Her eyes, when she looked up at Ada, were not the clouded eyes of age. They were clear and bright and knowing, too knowing. "You came," the old woman said, and her voice seemed to come from deep within the earth itself, echoing in Ada's bones. "You came with a heart full of regret and a soul desperate to make things right." Ada fell to her knees on the forest floor, her wrapper bunching around her legs. "Please," she begged, "please help me. I was foolish. I let a man destroy my father's life. I need to fix it. I need to give back what was taken." The old woman studied her for a long moment, and in that gaze, Ada felt naked, exposed, as if every secret thought, every hidden desire, was laid bare. "What you seek will come with a price," the old woman finally said. "Are you willing to pay it?" "Anything," Ada whispered. "I will pay anything." The old woman reached into a woven basket beside her and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in white cloth. She unwrapped it slowly, reverently, to reveal a garment, an undergarment of white cloth so pure it seemed to glow in the darkness. It was embroidered with symbols Ada did not recognize, symbols that seemed to shift and move in the lamplight. "This," the old woman said, holding it up, "will give you what you desire. Wear it, and men will see you as you have always wished to be seen. They will desire you. They will give you anything you ask. Their wealth will become yours. Their strength will become yours. Everything they have will flow to you like water flows downhill." Ada's heart began to pound. "But what is the price?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The old woman's eyes grew darker, deeper, like wells with no bottom. "You must never remove it. Never. Not to bathe, not to sleep, not even when you marry. This cloth must touch your skin always. If you remove it even for a moment, everything you have gained will be taken. Not just taken, child. It will be ripped away with interest. The debt will be collected, and it will be collected in pain. I understand, Ada said quickly, too quickly. The old woman placed the garment in Ada's hands, and it was warm, too warm, as if something alive pulsed within the threads. Remember my words, daughter of Obi. Never remove it. The spirits do not give second chances. They do not forgive. They only collect what is owed. Ada returned to the village before dawn, the white garment hidden beneath her wrapper. In her hut, with trembling hands, she removed her old cloth and put on the gift. The moment it touched her skin, something changed. She felt it in her bones, in her blood, like lightning had struck her body and left her burning from within. When she looked at her reflection in the bowl of water, she gasped. Her face was still her face. Her body was still her body. But something was different. Something in her eyes, something in the way she held herself, something that whispered, "Look at me. Want me. Give me everything you have." The transformation was immediate. That very morning when Ada went to the river to fetch water, every man she passed stopped what he was doing to stare. The village chief, ancient and powerful, turned his head as she walked by, his mouth opening in wonder. Young warriors forgot their training to watch her move. Even married men, faithful men, felt their hearts quicken. "Who is that?" they whispered to each other. "Is that Obi's daughter? The plain one? What happened to her?" The women noticed too, and their whispers were different, sharper, filled with suspicion and envy. "Look at her," they said at the market, clutching their wrappers tight. "Walking like she owns the village, like she is suddenly better than the rest of us. Something is not right, something dark." Within a week, 3 men had come to Obi's compound with bride prices so large, the old fisherman could barely believe his eyes. Bags of cowrie shells, bronze bracelets thick as snakes, fine cloth from distant lands, goats and chickens and promises of more. They all wanted Ada, desperately, as if they could not breathe without her. Obi, confused and concerned, tried to speak with his daughter. "Ada, what has happened? These men, they look at you like men possessed, like they have drunk too much palm wine and cannot think straight. This is not natural." But Ada only smiled. "Father, this is my chance to restore everything that Chike took from us. Please, let me do this." And so Obi, too tired to argue, too worn down by poverty to refuse, allowed it. Ada chose the richest of the suitors, a trader named Emeka, who owned 3 compounds and more cattle than could be counted. She married him in a ceremony that the entire village attended, their faces a mixture of amazement and unease. And that night, in Emeka's grand compound, wearing the white undergarment beneath her wedding wrapper, Ada lay beside her new husband and felt his wealth beginning to transfer to her. It was a feeling she could not explain, like invisible threads connecting his prosperity to her skin, pulling it slowly, inevitably, into her possession. 3 months passed, and Emeka began to lose everything. His cattle died of mysterious illnesses. His stored grain rotted overnight. His trading routes dried up as if cursed. Meanwhile, Ada grew wealthier. Bags of cowrie shells appeared in her hut. Fine wrappers and beads materialized as if from thin air. Her father's compound was rebuilt, stronger and larger than before. Obi's nets were replaced with new ones. The debt Chike had created was erased, doubled, tripled. The villagers watched with growing horror. "It is happening again," the women whispered at the river, their clay pots heavy on their heads. "Everything her husband had is going to her, just like before, but in reverse. This is not marriage. This is witchcraft." The elders gathered under the great tree, their faces grave. "The girl has done something," they said, passing the palm wine gourd. "She has made a deal with forces we cannot see, and deals like that always come with consequences." Emeka, confused and broken, divorced Ada within the year. He stood before the village council, his wrapper hanging loose on his now thin frame, his once proud shoulders bent. "She is cursed," he said, his voice hollow. "Or I am cursed for marrying her. I do not know which, but I cannot stay with her and survive." The village agreed. Whispers of the cursed wife began to follow Ada wherever she went. But she did not care. She had wealth now, power, and more importantly, she had restored her father's honor, or so she told herself. But the hunger, that terrible hunger to be seen and desired, had not been satisfied. It had only grown stronger, sharper, like a beast that becomes more ravenous with each feeding. Within 2 months, Ada had married again, a palm wine tapper named Obiora, strong and simple, who owned good land and tapped the finest wine in 3 villages. And again, the pattern repeated. Obiora's palms stopped producing. His wine turned sour in the gourds. His strength left him like water draining from a cracked pot. And Ada grew even wealthier. Her compound was now the finest in Umoja. Her wrappers were the brightest. Her beads were the most numerous. She walked through the village with her head high, finally seen, finally noticed, finally powerful. The villagers no longer whispered. They shouted, "Cursed woman!" they called when she passed. "Destroyer of men! Witch bride!" Mothers pulled their sons inside when they saw her coming. The chief declared that no man in Umoja should marry her again, that she brought ruin to any who touched her. But Ida did not listen. She could not listen. The hunger had consumed her completely. She was addicted to the power the undergarment gave her, addicted to being desired, addicted to taking from those who desired her. 5 years passed, 5 years and 7 husbands, 7 men left broken and poor, 7 families destroyed, and Ada's compound grew until it rivaled the chief's own. Her father, Obi, now living in comfort, watched his daughter with eyes full of sorrow. "Ada," he would say, sitting on his carved wooden stool, "this is not right. This is not what I wanted. You have restored what was taken, yes, but at what cost? Look at what you are becoming. Look at what you are doing to these men." But Ada, beautiful, powerful Ada, would only laugh. "Father, I am finally free, finally powerful, finally seen. Isn't this what you wanted for me? Security? Respect?" But Obi would shake his head, his weathered face sad. "This is not respect, daughter. This is fear, and fear is not love." Then came the day that everything changed. It was the height of the dry season, when the sun beat down mercilessly and the river ran low. Ada, in her grand compound, decided to bathe properly for the first time in 5 years. She had been careful, so careful, to never remove the white undergarment. She bathed with it on, slept with it on, lived with it on. But the cloth had begun to wear thin, to smell of sweat and time and all the lives it had consumed. And in a moment of frustration, in a moment of thinking herself clever, Ada thought, just for a moment, just to wash it properly, just to clean myself truly, what harm could one moment do? She removed the garment, peeled it from her skin like removing bark from a tree, and immediately the world changed. The air grew cold, the light grew dim. Somewhere in the distance, something howled, a sound that was not animal, not human, but something ancient and angry and hungry, hungry for what it was owed. Ada felt it immediately, a pulling, a terrible, violent pulling, as if invisible hands were reaching inside her body and ripping things out. She screamed so loud that the entire village heard, ran from their compounds, found her on the ground, writhing, the white garment lying beside her like a dead snake. And then it began. Everything she had taken came rushing back out, not gradually, not kindly, but violently. Her compound's walls cracked and crumbled. The roof collapsed. Her bags of cowrie shells burst open, the shells scattering and turning to dust before hitting the ground. Her fine wrappers disintegrated into threads. Her beads shattered. Her bronze bracelets melted into liquid and seeped into the earth. Everything she had accumulated through 5 years and 7 husbands, gone in moments. The villagers watched in horror and fascination. "The spirits," they whispered. "The spirits are collecting their dead." But it did not stop there. The curse, having been broken, demanded more than what was taken. It demanded interest, payment for the violation. Ada's skin, which had glowed with unnatural beauty, began to change. Dark spots appeared. spread. Her hair, which had been thick and lustrous, began to fall out in clumps. Her body, which had been strong and vital, withered like a plant denied water. She aged in hours what should have taken decades. The villagers gasped and covered their mouths. Children cried and ran away. Even the bravest warriors stepped back in fear. "This is the price," the elders said, watching from safe distances. "This is what happens when you break deals made with forces beyond our understanding. The spirits do not forgive. They only collect." Obi ran to his daughter, fell to his knees beside her. "Ada," he wept, gathering her breaking body in his arms. "Ada, what have you done?" But Ada could not speak. Her throat was closing. Her breath was failing. In her eyes, no longer beautiful, no longer powerful, was only terror and regret. The white undergarment lay beside them, and as they watched, it began to move, to writhe like a living thing, to fold itself. And then, as impossible as everything else that had happened that day, it stood up, walked away, disappeared into the forest from which it had come. That night, as Ada lay dying in her father's arms in what remained of her compound, the old woman from the forest appeared. She walked through the village as if she owned it, as if the spirits themselves parted before her. Her white hair seemed to glow in the darkness. Her purple wrapper was untouched by dust or age. She stopped before Obi and his daughter and looked down with those ancient, knowing eyes. "I warned her," the old woman said, her voice echoing across the silent village. "I told her the price. I told her the rules. But hunger makes fools of us all. Desire makes us deaf to wisdom. Please," Obi begged, his voice breaking. "Please, save her. She is all I have. Take everything back. Take all the wealth. Just save my daughter." The old woman knelt slowly, her joints creaking like old trees in wind. She placed a wrinkled hand on Ada's forehead, and the younger woman gasped. Color returned slightly to her cheeks. Her breathing eased, but the old woman shook her head. "I cannot undo what she has done to herself. The curse was not mine to give or take. It was hers to keep or break. She chose to break it. But," and here her voice softened slightly, "I can give her one more chance, one more breath, one more moment to speak her truth, to warn others of what she learned too late." Strength flowed back into Ada's body, but it was temporary. She could feel it, like borrowed time that would soon be reclaimed. She sat up, looked at the villagers gathered around, all of them watching, with faces full of fear and judgment. And she spoke. Her voice was weak, but clear, carrying across the compound, across the village, into the ears of all who had witnessed her rise and her fall. "I was foolish," she said, tears streaming down her ruined face. "I wanted so desperately to be seen, to be desired, to be powerful, that I made a deal I did not truly understand. The old woman warned me. She told me never to remove the garment. But I thought I was clever. I thought I could bend the rules. I thought I deserved a moment of freedom after all I had done." She coughed, and blood appeared on her lips. Obi held her tighter. "But the spirits," Ada continued, "they do not care what we think we deserve. They care only about the deals we make and the rules we break. I took from 7 men. I destroyed 7 families. I thought I was taking back what Chike stole from me, what life owed me for being invisible. But I was only creating more debt, more pain, more destruction. And now the spirits have come to collect not just what I took, but everything I am." The villagers listened in silence. Even the children were quiet, sensing that they were witnessing something important, something that would be told around fires for generations to come. "If you seek power through unnatural means," Ada whispered, her strength fading, "know that the price is always higher than you think. Know that spirits do not forgive. Know that hunger for what you do not have will consume you until there is nothing left but ash and regret." She looked at her father, at his weathered face wet with tears, and smiled sadly. "Father, I am sorry. I am so sorry. You loved me when I was invisible. You saw me when no one else did, and I threw that away for false power and false beauty. I destroyed everything for a hunger that could never be satisfied." Obi pulled her close, rocking her like he had when she was a child. "I forgive you, daughter. I forgive you." As the first light of dawn broke over Umoja, Ada took her last breath. The borrowed strength left her body like birds taking flight. The old woman stood, her purple wrapper swirling around her, and looked at the assembled villagers. "Remember this," she said, her voice carrying like thunder. "Remember what happens when we seek power without understanding the price. Remember what happens when we break our word to forces we do not comprehend. And remember that true wealth is not in cowrie shells or fine wrappers or grand compounds. True wealth is in being loved for who you are, not for what you can take or what you appear to be." She turned and walked away, back toward the forbidden forest, and the villagers parted before her like grass before wind. Some said they saw her dissolve into mist before she reached the trees. Others said she simply vanished between one step and the next. But all agreed they had witnessed something beyond their understanding, something ancient and powerful and terrible. Obi buried his daughter beneath the Iroko tree at the edge of the village. He marked her grave with white stones and planted flowers that would bloom even in the dry season. And every year, on the anniversary of her death, he would sit beside that grave and speak to her spirit. "I loved you, daughter. I loved you when you were invisible, and I loved you when you were powerful, and I love you still, broken as you were. If only you had known that being loved is more powerful than being desired. If only you had known that being seen by one who truly cares is worth more than being wanted by many who only wish to possess." The 7 men Ada had married slowly recovered. Their wealth did not return, for wealth stolen by spirits cannot be reclaimed. But their strength returned, their will to live returned, and each of them spoke of the experience with voices full of warning. "She was cursed," they would say at the Palm Wine Bar, passing the gourd. Or, "We were cursed for wanting what we should not have wanted." But the lesson is clear. What seems too good to be true usually comes with a price too terrible to pay. The village of Umoja never forgot Ada's story. Mothers told it to their daughters when they saw them gazing too long in water reflections. Fathers told it to their sons when they watched them pursue women with desperate eyes. The elders told it to the young when they saw the hunger for power and recognition growing in foolish hearts. "Remember the girl who wore the cursed garment," they would say. "Remember that the spirits do not give gifts, only loans, and the interest they charge will break you if you are not careful." Years later, travelers passing through Umoja would sometimes see a young woman standing at the edge of the forbidden forest, wearing a white undergarment that glowed in the darkness. Some said it was Ada's spirit, doomed to warn others of the path she had chosen. Others said it was the old woman's magic, a permanent reminder of the price of broken promises. But whoever it was, whoever saw her, would hear the same words carried on the wind. "Never remove it, never remove it. The debt must always be paid." And so they learned that true beauty comes from within, that real power comes from being loved rather than feared, and that the hungers we feed will eventually consume us if we are not careful. They learned that deals made with ancient forces should never be taken lightly, and that warnings given by those who know better should be heeded, even when our hearts are full of desperate desire. The end.